Hi everyone! Today, we will revisit the development of our own brothers and sisters, the indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples and development. Indigenous peoples are proponents and representatives of humanity's cultural diversity. Historically, indigenous peoples have been marginalized by dominant societies and have often faced assimilation and cultural genocide. In the multicultural societies growing up around them, indigenous peoples seek an end to such marginalization and fringe dwelling. They have much to contribute to society, and they bring to both national and international debates valuable advice about the great issues facing humanity in this new millennium. Indigenous peoples have dynamic living cultures and seek their place in the modern world. They are not against development, but for too long, they have been victims of development and now demand to be participants in and to benefit from a development that is sustainable.
Culture and development. Increasing recognition is being given to the principle of indigenous peoples, determining their own pace and path of development. And there is increasing recognition that social and cultural diversity is in the interest of society and is not an obstacle to national development or economic stability. There is increasing recognition that there is dignity in all cultures, that there should be equality in opportunity for all segments of society, and that all segments of society deserves opportunities for all equal access to both the factors and the benefits of development.
Sustainable development and indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples' distinct livelihoods depend on access to land and natural resources, and sustainable development is therefore an issue of crucial concern to indigenous peoples all over the world. All kinds of economic development and growth, which include building of infrastructure and the transformation of natural ecosystems, pose a special risk to the physical, social, and cultural survival of indigenous peoples and to their traditional occupations and environmental knowledge. The Philippines is home to around 110 indigenous peoples communities, approximately 15 to 20 million in population, more than 60% in Mindanao, 30% in Luzon, 10% in Visayas. While varying in ways of life and cultural heritage, they share similar experiences of discrimination and marginalization. In 1997, Philippine government passed the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act or Republic Act 8371 that recognizes and protects the rights of indigenous communities. In 1980s, the various forms of interventions done by IPAS and religious congregations were any or a combination of the following: teaching basic literacy, numeracy to children and adults based on mainstream approaches, methods, and content, or basic literacy; provision of adult-based trainings based on mainstream approaches and content, or livelihood education; provision of school supplies, scholarships, tutorials, or support to inter-school; provision of infrastructure, personnel, or usually lowlander, curriculum, evaluation, tools, books, and school calendar based on mainstream education system or school buildings. Aspirations of indigenous peoples. The aspirations of indigenous peoples, defined as many meetings and conferences over the past decade, may be summarized as follows. First, recognition and respect of indigenous peoples' rights. Second, respect of indigenous culture and knowledge system initiatives. Third, right to meaningful participation. For their participation to be meaningful, they want to have access to key information and to be actively involved in decision-making process. And lastly, autonomy of action.
Role of education. Education is both a universal human right and a fundamental means to achieve other human rights. Enjoyment of the right to education is essential to achieving equitable development and respect for cultural diversity. It is an investment for the future and a means to reduce poverty and counter discrimination. Education can be a means through which indigenous peoples better develop the skills to manage the development of their communities and to actively participate at all levels of decision-making processes.
Sometimes we ask, what is so important about culture? Why should we, like our indigenous sisters and brothers, be so assertive about it? It is not just because of its aesthetic value, or its uniqueness, or the economics of it. Culture is at the core of being human, an expression of how we have encountered God through life questions. It contains the blessings or graces of God to a people which, if nurtured well, make us able to share these blessings and graces with each other. In the case of our indigenous brothers and sisters, they have shared their blessings with us, but we're abused, neglected, and ridiculed in return. We have to continue journeying with our indigenous brothers and sisters as they articulate and define an education system that will once again nurture their tribe, communities, and culture before it is too late.